Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening. This is one of many crew town halls, and we really appreciate all the union leaders that have taken the time to join us this evening, as well as all the members from all the various unions. My name is Christine O'Connell. I am the president of the Union of Rutgers Administrators, URA-AFT, Local 1766. And I represent about 2,700 administrative staff here at the university.
Of course.
We represent everyone from student counselors, dining employees, maintenance folks, and every administrative assistant in between in every academic department. And I'm going to hand it over to Asan.
Thank you, Christine. Hi, everyone, and welcome again. My name is Asan. I'm a third-year PhD student at the School of Criminal Justice at Rutgers, Newark. I'm also a member of the graduate steering and executive committees of the AAUP-AFT. And I want to just briefly build on and affirm what Christine shared before giving our speakers the room to introduce themselves and who they're representing so we could get the program started today. Over the course of the last few months, my roles mean that I've been exposed to firsthand kind of the stickiness of institutional decision-making, the arbitrary nature of institutional decision-making, kind of the callousness and disregard for the impact and consequences of those decisions. Being exposed to that also means that I was really fortunate to kind of witness this coalition coming together and to learn from them. And to witness the folks that will be speaking today, as Christine said, some representatives from our various unions encompassing 20,000 members, some in our agreement and others here today in support of it. I got to witness them stand in solidarity and strength with one another, and that's been gratifying, which was and is incredible. And it is ultimately this coalition, the reason that we are here today in with this agreement on the table. And without me rambling on too much, I'm going to give the floor to Ryan to introduce himself and who he represents.
Hi, my name is Ryan Novosielski. I'm co-president of Health Professionals and Allied Employees Local 5094. We represent professionals at mostly the former UMDNJ portion of Rutgers, so Rutgers Biomedical and Health Sciences, sorry. Also employees at University Hospital, which is the state's only remaining public hospital, which is really hard to believe, but true. And staff at Rowan University's School of Osteopathic Medicine. I personally work with supercomputers for a living at Rutgers. I've been here about 20 years.
Thank you, Ryan. If I could have Kathy introduce herself from the CWA.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Hernandez. I'm the Vice President of CWA Local 1031. At Rutgers, we have about 340 supervisors and the RBHS, and we represent workers at the former UMDNJ also, University Hospital, Rowan SOM, as well as in higher education throughout New Jersey.
Thank you so much, Kathy. If I could have Bryan please introduce himself.
Thanks, Asan. Hi, everybody. I'm Bryan Sacks. I'm the treasurer of the PTLFC, which is the adjuncts union here at Rutgers. The adjunct union has as many as 3,000 members at different times of the year, some years. And it's been very eye-opening, as Asan said, and I was the lead bargainer for our team, and I echo much of what she said about the role that the administration's played in this process. And I've been really glad to see the solidarity that's come together. That was also mentioned.
Thank you so much, Bryan. Dio, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, yes, my name is Diomedes Tsitouras. I'm the executive director of the AAUP-BHSNJ. We are the faculty union for the Rutgers Biohealth Science faculty, 1,400 in total. In addition, we represent faculty at Rowan School of Osteopathic Medicine, and like my colleagues, I'm proud to stand with them. They really hung in there to get this great deal on behalf of everybody, especially the grad students, because I really personally I never thought that would happen, and that's just amazing. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dio. If I could have Christine, you already introduced yourself. We know who you are. I'm going to let Donna introduce herself, please.
Hi, my name is Donna Murch, and I'm a professor of history and on the executive council of Rutgers AAUP-AFT, the Faculty and Grad Union, and I'm also the co-chair of the People of Color Committee.
Thank you, Donna. Justin?
Hello, my name is Justin O'Hay. I'm a clinical social worker at Rutgers University, University Behavioral Healthcare in Piscataway. I am also co-president of Healthcare Professionals and Allied Employees, Local 5094. It's been a rough year and a really tough battle, but I have to say that I couldn't be with better company, and solidarity, everyone.
Thank you, Justin. Finally, Todd.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Todd Wolfson. I'm president of Rutgers AAUP-AFT. We represent the faculty not in the biomedical, the rest of the faculty at the university, the postdocs, the grad workers, and EOF counselors here at Rutgers. And I guess I have the great honor of presenting our keynote tonight. We're so lucky, and so it's my pleasure to get to introduce a colleague and a comrade and a friend, Naomi Klein. Naomi is the inaugural Gloria Steinem Chair in Media, Culture, and Feminist Studies here at Rutgers. Many of us, probably all of us, are familiar with her work, as she's one of the leading public intellectuals over the last 20 years, from her work that changed my research on the global justice movement and her groundbreaking book, No Logo, to her work, which I think we might hear about tonight, on disaster capitalism, and the fantastic book, The Shock Doctrine, to her more recent path-breaking work on the climate crisis, most notably with the books This Changes Everything and On Fire. And most recently, and I have to note this, she published a Young Humans Guide to Battling the Climate Change with How to Change Everything, which I'm going to show folks. And this matters here in my household because currently I'm reading it with my 3 kids, Sebastian, Rosie, and Levi. And my daughter now is convinced that she wants to be Greta Thunberg. So thank you, Naomi. Before I turn it over to Naomi, I do want to say that beyond being one of the most important public intellectuals of our time, Naomi's been just a fantastic colleague. I'm lucky that she's been in my department. She's been an amazing union stalwart here at Rutgers. She's also been, beyond being a public intellectual, a leading activist around climate change fight, developing an organization that's at the front lines called the LEAP. And most importantly, she's just been a thoughtful and friend, and so it's just an honor to get to work with her. And so with that, I'm going to pass it to you, Naomi.
Thank you, Todd. I must say, I'm not surprised to hear there are future climate strikers in the Wolfson family. What a joy to be with all of you. It's making me a little emotional. I miss my friends, my colleagues, and I'm just so proud that I get to work with you and get to speak about this incredibly important tentative agreement that you've reached. I'm going to be talking about some of the details, and it's not really fair because I didn't do the hard work, but I'll take it because it's so exciting. And I just want to start with huge thanks to the entire trade union leadership and negotiating bargaining teams at Rutgers. One of the things that I'm most excited about is that this tentative agreement represents a serious counterattack on a strategy that I have spent much of my life researching and writing about, something Todd mentioned, the shock doctrine. For those of you not familiar with it, this refers to this well-worn tactics we see our elites use time and again, capitalizing on states of crisis and collective trauma and dislocation, not to actually solve the underlying drivers of crisis, but to exploit those moments when we are in pain, when we are focused on the day-to-day emergencies of life, in order to ram through their pre-existing wish list of pro-corporate policies. But it's one thing to research a phenomenon and another to live through it firsthand. We should be very clear. When the pandemic hit more than a year ago, our university administration, like so many others in positions of power in large institutions at the state and national level, dusted off the shock doctrine playbook. The administration used the crisis to try to pit us against each other, to rapidly sacrifice the most vulnerable members of our community, and to threaten us with ever more draconian measures, including a state of fiscal emergency that would allow them to break contracts if we didn't play along. But here is the good news. It didn't work. It didn't work because our unions stayed strong. This tentative agreement is the product of a year-long fight for a people-centered alternative in the pandemic crisis. When management turned to layoffs and austerity last spring, the 19 unions of the Coalition of Rutgers Unions came together to develop an alternative approach that saves jobs, protects the vulnerable, and centers the university's core mission of teaching, research, and service. The former Vajtay regime rejected CREW's proposals and in classic shock doctrine style used the pandemic as an excuse for austerity and disciplining the workforce. We were able to achieve progress on many core demands because of the coalition's plan for work sharing. Our trade unions did the university's homework for them and figured out how they could save tens of millions of dollars through furloughs, while all but the most highly paid workers would protect their full income through unemployment insurance. The key achievements in return for work sharing are, and I'll just run through these: job security for staff, no layoff guarantee through January 1st, 2022. It's very significant. PTL reappointments, the hiring freeze was rescinded and hiring authority returned to the deans, another tremendous achievement. And as was already mentioned, grad funding extensions. We've seen significant improvements in the program announced by the university, opening the way to fight for a universal program. And we do still need that universal program. I know, I'm entirely dependent on my incredible graduate student research assistant, and it's really been horrible watching what she's been put through, and so many of our colleagues have been going through as they have been doing such difficult work under such difficult circumstances. Another thing in the agreement is a timetable for raises. Canceled raises will now be paid on a deferred basis. Another key front for progress was on the fiscal emergency, near and dear to my heart. Management won't be allowed to declare a fiscal emergency again through the end of June 2022. In other words, the pandemic cannot be weaponized against the people who have kept the university running through the pandemic. CREW set a crucial precedent by getting management to negotiate jointly with the biggest unions in the coalition. The divide and conquer tactic used since the beginning of the pandemic failed. The example of solidarity set by the coalition is one of the most important accomplishments of these negotiations. And this example goes beyond us here at Rutgers. It's a model for the broader trade union movement, especially for post-secondary education, but even going beyond that. The people-centered agenda developed by CREW has created a vision of what the public university of the 21st century can and should look like, with faculty, staff, students, and the community all given a voice, all having each other's backs. The people-centered alternative is directly connected to the New Deal for Higher Education initiative that Rutgers faculty have been a part of initiating. In the face of management's austerity-centered response to the pandemic, the coalition's solidarity and people-centered alternative show we are stronger together, stronger when we fight their bad ideas, not by simply saying no, but with our own bold, inspiring ones. We're not just engaging in a politics of rejection. We are putting our vision forward. We haven't won it all yet, but this is an incredibly important beginning. It's clear the university administrators, and Rutgers is no exception here, saw the crisis we are all still living through as a shock doctrine style opportunity to push through their wish list. More austerity, more precarity, more backdoor privatizations of our education commons, including by contracting out to data mining tech giants. Conversely, our union saw the crisis as an opportunity as well, an opportunity to build a broader united front for all workers. The approach that we have developed at Rutgers is a model for higher education. We have used union strength to protect the most vulnerable on campus, and we have built a broader united front of struggle that links all workers together. We have much more work to do, but one thing is clear: This tentative agreement deserves our support because we are stronger together and the university doesn't work without us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Naomi. That was awesome. Thank you for your insight. And like Todd stated, your research I know has impacted me and turned me into an environmental criminologist rather than what I was coming in. It is definitely one thing to read theory and one thing to read books on how these things unfold, and then to be thrust into the middle of it and to see how it actually impacts people and how detrimental it is. So thank you so much for sharing your insight on this topic. And now I'm going to give the floor to Ryan and Justin. Thank you.
I guess I can start. So again, my name is Justin O'Hay. I'm a licensed clinical social worker at Rutgers University. I work with University Behavioral Health Care in Piscataway, a community mental health and addictions program. Our local oversees around 2,500 healthcare professionals across the state of New Jersey, all the way from University Hospital, the premier level 1 trauma center in Newark, New Jersey, through all the medical schools, pretty much the largest public mental health and addictions network in the state. And we have been in the trenches since the beginning of this. We were in the trenches before the pandemic really even started. We have very difficult and often thankless work. And in this environment that has been increasingly corporatized, it has really become a place of great suffering, not just for the clients that we serve, but also for the people who carry out the work. I think it's not like the last year has been a giant collective and in some instances a concentrated trauma amongst our healthcare professionals and people who have been really just fighting to keep people alive and to preserve public health across the state. And during this time that everybody's scrambling to mitigate this disaster, we were attacked by the university in a multitude of ways. We had faced really draconian cuts in our staffing, layoffs, and we had this opportunity to work together with the coalition of Rutgers unions to try and actually make history. It was a really tough go, and the university had a lot of tricks up its sleeve, and it did everything it could to employ strategies to break off bargaining units, to attack the trades, to split the trades and the professional unions, and to do all these different things. In some instances that was successful, but throughout the process, people made the decisions that they had to make, right? But throughout the process, the people who were able to hang on, the sense of solidarity that we've forged through this process has really been a life-changing and kind of eye-opening experience. What we've created is a forward-thinking, multidisciplinary, multi-professional, multiracial, and multicultural coalition with students, with faculty, with staff, with tradespeople, that hopefully moving forward, we can actually create a force to really turn Rutgers around or make them run with their tail between their legs, I'm hoping. Now, one thing that has kind of come to play that I feel like we've been lacking is that, class consciousness, and that people suffer to different degrees, and that in some instances, poverty and situations like that can really be stress magnifiers. And that we're hoping that by making this agreement with Rutgers, that we're able to, what's the word I'm looking for? That we're able to kind of bring people back in. So the tradespeople, the people who are poverty stricken, people who are in a tougher spot, that this gives them a sense of hope that we can move forward and that we can create something new, and we can create power through solidarity. There's something powerful about uniting trades, the professions, and the students. And we're hoping that once we get through this, the enormous endurance that it's taken to get through this crisis, that once we've made it through this, that nothing can really stop us, and that we want people to join us in solidarity. We want to continue to build this movement into the future, and we want to try and create a coalition that can't be stopped.
Just, something I want to add here, we managed to do all of this during a pandemic that was putting our members' lives at risk every day. So an example of how we are directly involved, we have respiratory therapists that were, looking in people's mouths, speech therapists, people doing mental health care in situations where telling people to socially distance or keep a mask on is maybe not practical. HPAE as a union has lost 6 union members over the course of the pandemic, and that's even hiding some other death that's associated with them. So some of those 6 people, their spouse died a few days later, their other family members. It's really been an incredible loss for the healthcare community. And beyond that, we mentioned before, they also, the state of New Jersey did a large budget cut to the child health units. The Francois Xavier Bagnoud Center that coming out of a neglect situation in South Jersey years ago, there was a decree that said that this unit would be established so that there would be nurses looking in on foster children. That program saw a $4.3 million cut, and we lost 72 nurses there. Another area is mental health care, particularly for children in crisis. We lost another 50, 60 members there. This is all stuff that the pandemic is exacerbating. And we took these, draconian cuts, and it's ultimately hurting the people that everybody in the public eye says are hurting the most already from the pandemic. It's just shameful. Something I wanted to say, though, in particular, one of the things about this coalition effort that I really appreciated was, there was a solid week basically at one point where we were effectively waiting for the grad students' language to be more satisfactory and for the program to be improved. We all, put our agreement at risk in order to make sure that the grad students were better taken care of. And I haven't really seen that sort of solidarity at the university before. We also at one point said to the university, listen, we think that we need the deferrals to be ending on March 1st, not April 1st. And, we at one point said basically like, hey, there's a lot of value in this deal for Rutgers. If you don't want to take it, you don't have to take it. And they caved in and gave us that extra month, which is, it's not a huge win, but it's a small win that we can use to leap off of as we go into contract negotiations. So I think that's basically it. Sorry about that phone ringing.
Thank you so much, Ryan. And I feel like this process has changed my perception of wins and what it means to gain something from management in this instance. So a win is a win. We'll take everything we can get. Kathy, please.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Hernandez, the Vice President of CWA Local 1031. CWA is a huge union in the state of New Jersey, and we represent state workers. And my local in particular, we represent higher education. We are at Ramapo, Montclair, Rowan, Stockton, we're all over the state. But at Rutgers, we are a smaller unit. We're just the supervisors in the RBHS. But we worked with some giants, and it was so great. I just have to say that I am a graduate of Rutgers. I did my undergraduate and graduate work there in labor studies. I went to go work for a union, so I actually am doing what I went to school for. So yay. And there are times where in 2008, when there was a recession, I thought, what am I doing? Why am I doing this if I can't help people? Well, this last year, as trying as it's been, for me personally, as well as many others, for our members who, as Ryan and Justin explained, over on the medical school side, we are dealing still with patients, or we are supporting people who are dealing with patients, and we can't all telecommute. So we are there and putting our lives in danger. During this past year, the solidarity that we had by working with the professors and the grad students, and for the part-time professors who are experiencing something totally different and having their jobs eliminated, and also having to learn how to use Zoom, which I still don't know how to use. It was really, really enlightening, and it was empowering. And I feel so empowered because the agreement that we were able to get, this fiscal emergency settlement, was based on something CWA did with the state of New Jersey. And our partner with the state of New Jersey was the governor. And after the last 8 years of having a different governor, it was so good to have someone who wanted to work with you. And we agreed to defer our raises in exchange for job security. And we did the same thing here at Rutgers. We were able to get Rutgers to come to the table. And we were able to get a deal that's better than those that the other unions had to take because they were scared and they had to make decisions on short notice to protect their members. So I feel so grateful of the solidarity and the empowerment that we were able to work together. And I just want to say that this doesn't end here today. We don't vote on this fiscal emergency settlement and walk away. We're going to grow and things are going to get better. We are shortly going to talk to you about healthcare, and we'll have some options for you there. And then we are going to be standing together during the next round of negotiations, and we're going to build off this. And we're not going to let them divide us like they did in the past.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And now we're going to hear a bit from our CRU partners that were not in the agreement, but they are here in support of us and in solidarity with us today. If you can take it away, Bryan.
Thanks, Hassan, and thanks everyone for having the opportunity to speak here to the Coalition of Rutgers Union's members. You know, were it not for the solidarity that was shown to PTLs during this negotiation process, we wouldn't have won the lifting of the PTL hiring freeze, which the anniversary of which would be tomorrow. It shows that when we stick together and fight for one another, we can win. But we should also acknowledge the limits of what this policy reversal means for PTLs. It won't by itself return the lost appointments of the 400 PTLs that weren't rehired this year, nor will it return course caps to their pre-COVID levels, which in fact may even need to be lowered given the need for social distancing when we return to the classroom. For these things to happen, PTLs need to keep pushing, and for our full-time faculty colleagues to assist us. And here's one way I think that it can help. The lifting of the hiring freeze means that authority to hire PTLs returns to the deans in the department level. And so we're of course aware that departments have varying financial services and are under a lot of pressure, and there's all sorts of varying practices around scheduling the PTLs in departments. With all that in mind, we're asking the full-time faculty members who have responsibilities in these areas to advocate for the return of courses that students need and want. Among the things the hiring freeze did was to force departments to eliminate course offerings, and many of those courses were taught by experienced PTLs. And we're not asking this because restoring these courses to the curriculum is good for PTLs. We ask because doing so serves students and their academic needs. It enriches their education. We teach important courses. For the same reason, we would ask that our full-time colleagues advocate as best they can for course caps to be returned to pre-COVID levels wherever possible. The administration, as we know, used the COVID crisis and the necessity for online teaching as a pretext to raise course caps far beyond levels that are consistent with the best outcomes for students. And they did this while cutting PTL courses in shock doctrine style, as Naomi told us. But we can't let this become the new normal. Rutgers, in other words, just can't get away with claiming it's serving students by harming their teachers. It's one reason why our units launched a petition that calls for PTLs that were dismissed in fall 2020 to be rehired, for course offerings to be restored, and for a return in sizing classes, for a return to sizing classes where they were prior to COVID. We'd love everybody to sign it. I'm sure somebody will put it in the chat if it's not been. I appreciate that, Emily, or if somebody else can. Sign it so we can send this to President Holloway quickly. And again, we ask all full-time faculty who have the opportunity and have the position to stay with us in this fight. I just want to say one last thing and to echo some of what's been said before. This has been a grueling process, for those of us who were doing bargaining and getting updates and trying to keep members informed. But it's been extremely gratifying to see solidarity grow between members of different unions. Our local is thrilled that staff unions won the job protections that they fought really hard for and deserve, and that grad workers made real progress toward getting the kind of extensions that they deserve, and they deserve more. We're going to stay in the fight with them. We're proud to have played PTLs the small role that we did in those efforts. It means a lot to us. And we understand that the only way to be in this is to be in it together. So thanks for hearing from us tonight. Solidarity.
Thank you so much, Bryan. Thank you so much. Emily dropped the petition a bit earlier in the chat before we started talking about Ryan and Justin's beards. Don't shave. I am gonna turn it on over to Dio. Thank you, Dio.
Hi, and thanks for letting me be a part of this. Again, I represent the 1,400 faculty on the Rutgers Bio-Health Science side. And while we're not a part of this deal, I'd like to congratulate the coalition for reaching it. And it's, for those of you that don't know and are not in the trenches with the administration on a day-to-day basis, it is quite a feat that the coalition was able to accomplish this. And for those of you who've been following the story, last summer, the coalition actually came together and gave them a very generous furlough deal that would have saved the university, over $100 million. And unfortunately, the university just walked away from it. And they rather choose the most callous and heinous and nonsensical approaches to human resource management by laying people off, pitting people against others, mismanaging resources. And it's just unfortunate because in New Jersey, where we're the premier, state university, and we are the flagship, I mean, we should start by being the flagship when how we treat our people, both our students and the people that make the university work. Our folks, we're just like HPAE in the sort of the center of the COVID crisis in terms of taking care of patients in ICUs and emergency rooms, but also we have faculty down in Department of Health tracking data. And so it's just amazing that when you are, in this such a vulnerable position of the last year, that the university, rather than try to do all that's possible to support people in such a vulnerable time, takes the opposite approach and tries to punish them by taking raises away from people, threatening their jobs, all while, high-paid university bureaucrats are completely nice, comfortable at home. They might take a small little 2% pay cut for the press, so they have a press release. But other than that, there's no real, adverse consequences to them. And I'm glad that this deal is going to, this is a big ship to turn, but it's a slow turn, but this is a start in really prioritizing the values of this university and really isolating those university bureaucrats at the top, and really say that there's a new direction for how we're going to do labor relations at the university and how we're going to treat people going forward. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dio. We're going to turn it over to Christine with the URA. Christine, you're muted.
There we go. Sorry, I was having some trouble unmuting. I just want to echo what everybody else has said so far. It's been an honor and a privilege to work with you guys, right? We have tried to work in coalition in the past, and it's a shame that it took a tragedy such as the pandemic to bring us together in such strong response to a common issue, right? How Rutgers was choosing to respond during a pandemic. We, as others have said, we presented a series of proposals. We did want to protect the most vulnerable. We presented proposals that centered concerns of every union. But more importantly, the commitment that all the unions had to one another throughout this very long process is more impressive than I can even explain to you guys. We have been able to advocate for one another's needs, which is something that, we've always spoke about, but have fallen short on in the past. In this historic agreement with each other and the university, this is the first time that Rutgers has recognized that multiple unions simultaneously reached agreement, will all sign the same piece of paper and craft protections that involve all of us. So as we pivot moving forward to a greater future together, we're going to go into the next campaign stronger than we have before. And I believe, are moving forward lockstep. We pledge to leave no one behind. So thank you, everyone that has stuck together. I am, again, honored and in awe of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. Todd, Donna, and I are going to be speaking for the AAUP-AFT, and Donna will get us started. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you so much, Isan. It's really hard to follow Christine because she said everything so beautifully, and kind of everything that I think and feel about the coalition. Picking up on something that Dio said about a new direction for labor relations, that's also how I understand this historic agreement, and having 19 unions covering 20,000 workers working in coalition with one another. The pandemic has been such a devastating time for so many of us. Many of us have lost people that we love. We have really had the world around us changed and transformed forever. But for me, the pandemic has also been a time of revelation, because much of it for us has been spent in coming together, building solidarity, learning about our shared struggles. And in doing this, I've taught at Rutgers for over 16 years, but from working together with all of the other unions, I've learned so much about a place that I thought that I knew. I think that this coalitional struggle that's really looking at the university as a site of employment, and unfortunately a site of a lot of precarity and low wage employment, is not separate from the wave of labor activism that we're seeing today. We are all, of course, waiting for the results of the NLRB election in Bessemer, Alabama, which will have a significance for all of the United States and all of the world. So those battles against low wage, precarious work, it stretches from a place like Bessemer, Alabama to Camden, New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey, and New Brunswick, New Jersey. So I think of our coalitional work together and our victory in that larger context. One of the really exciting things I think that's happening is watching this intersectional social justice unionism that has been influenced by the movement for Black lives and all of the activism that we've seen this year, again, responding to the pain of the pandemic. Rutgers is located in majority Black and brown communities in urban New Jersey. And this fight about work and employment is crucial for communities of color. So also for that reason, our victories in this MOA mean everything. I guess I would just like to conclude by thinking about a quote from Martin Luther King, who called unions the first anti-poverty program. And I think that that's crucial. You know, we're witnessing a struggle in Bessemer, Alabama, where the richest man in the world is fighting a majority Black workforce. And similarly, many people at Rutgers make less than $40,000 a year. Many people are experiencing low wage employment. And I think that, especially in the aftermath of the Trump administration, we're often made to feel that there's nothing that we can do, that there's this sort of steady decline and we just have to figure out how to live with it. And so for me, being involved in the struggle has shown me that the real way that we can change conditions is feeling empathy, identification, and solidarity with one another. None of us are whole unless all of the members of the beloved community are with us.
That was so beautifully said. Thank you so much, Donna. I thought a lot about what I wanted to share with you all today. And, you know, as I stated at the front end of this, I serve in various spaces in the AAUP-AFT, and I'm also my department representative for the union. So I've been the liaison between my colleagues and my friends and grads like across campuses. So I've been intimately confronted with how COVID-19 and the decisions management has made have impacted grad workers at Rutgers. You know, I've experienced it myself, the impossibility of completing a PhD in our current circumstances, the impossibility of caring for our family, for our friends, for maintaining our responsibilities, completing care tasks. All of it has been impossible during this time. And that goes for everyone. This has been a universal experience that we've all kind of shared, right? And it was odd. There was like a cognitive dissonance there between the severity of what we were experiencing and the anxiety of what we were experiencing, and management's reaction to it, and the way that that suffering was normalized, the way that it was expected that grads were to perform impossible tasks and to balance research and to balance teaching and to balance assisting and to balance their families and their financial responsibilities all at the same time, because that was the position we were in. That was the sort of subordinate position that we were supposed to be in. And our union, our coalition came in and denormalized that, right? They denormalized this attempt that management sort of presented to present our experiences as okay, right? So they wanted to disguise our labor issue as an academic issue, to disguise what we were experiencing as our responsibility or somehow part of the graduate experience. And the union and the coalition stepped in and said, no, this is an issue of labor. This is an issue of dignity. This is an issue of securing financial stability, health insurance, and our right to long-term stability, right? It's been humbling and honoring to be in this space and to have so many people kind of put their necks on the line for grads, right? And we're the first in the nation, the first public institution in the nation to do this. And like folks have stated, there's definitely ways to go. There's room to grow from here. But what we've accomplished, no one else has. No. Todd, if you can step in.
Come on. Anyway, thank you. I just want to say, I want to say thank you to everyone, to Naomi for joining us, to Donna and Hassan, but also to Ryan, Justin, Kathy, Brian, Dio, and Christine. I feel honored and humbled to get to have worked with you all across the last year, and to all of Crew and to all of our locals, and to think about how we're going to get to build together in the struggles to come. It's just wonderful. I also just want to take a second before I make a few short comments to acknowledge Becky Gibbon, who's the Rutgers AAUP-AFT Vice President. She's not up with us here, but she has been next to me certainly every single step, and I'm just so lucky. So we've heard a lot this evening, so I want to be brief because I think we really want to get into the Q&A. But what I want to say is that since the pandemic began, we have collectively called on Rutgers University and the administrators that run this university to be a beacon in the dark, to be the shining university on a hill that offers a different vision, to lead in responding to this crisis in a humane and ethical manner that befits a great public university. That's what we've called on them to do for over a year. It took us a year to get here, but we finally have a tentative agreement, which is a serious step in that direction. And my hope is it's a signal from the new administration that they want to govern differently. That's my hope. But the MOA is not everything we need. It's a step forward, but it's not all we need. And the other thing I think it's important to be clear about is we only got here. We only got here because of the work of the coalition, the unions in the coalition, our allies, and the workers across this university. We are the ones that have led. It's all of us that have led here. We have been the ones that figured out a creative, people-centered approach to this pandemic, which prioritized taking care of all of us and making sure that the university didn't ride out a pandemic on the backs of the most vulnerable, low-wage workers, women, people of color, which is what they've always done, what every administration always looks to do in a crisis. If we had left this situation up to the administration, the story of where we'd be today would have been very different, and they would have continued to use this pandemic as a strategy to continue to punish the workforce and punish the least secure most forcefully. And I think Naomi laid this out very deftly earlier, but we know that's what they would have done. That's what they said they were going to do. And that's what they did until we stopped them. And we haven't fully stopped them, but at least we've begun to stop them. That's what they want to do because they don't think on any other levels than their bottom line. That's the limit of their imagination, is how big their unrestricted and restricted reserves can be. so that maybe one day there will be a rain. God knows the pandemic seems like it was a rainy day, but maybe there'll be some other rainy day where they can actually use their unrestricted reserves instead of shopping them around on the stock market, which is what they're doing. But what's the lesson here? To me, the lesson is that we, the workers that make this university run, alongside our students, we are the ones that need to take responsibility for the future of this university. It is us, the faculty, the administrative staff, the grad workers, the grad students, the undergraduate students, the doctors and nurses and techs, the counselors, the dining staff, and the facilities workers. It's us. It is us that must take responsibility for the future of this university. It is only us that can lead in the interest of all of Rutgers. They will lead in the interest of their bottom line. We will lead in the interest of the 100,000 people at Rutgers, 70,000 students, 30,000 workers. But we will also be the ones that lead in the interest of the great state of New Jersey, right? It's only us that can do that. And to that end, while the tentative agreement we have is good, it doesn't do everything we need because it does not protect all of us that have been hurt by the pandemic and the administration's response to the pandemic. And it's clear that we are going to continue to fight to remedy that. But nonetheless, this tentative agreement is so important because it consecrates a move towards building a larger front of struggle that includes all workers at this university. So today, the MOA that we're signing probably impacts about 10,000 of us. And we're on the path, but we're on the path to build a coalition that's much bigger. And I also think it's important to note that the MOA that we've signed, the university has signaled that it will turn to the other unions and it will negotiate with them based on what we won. So while we have won something for 10,000 workers, it will likely impact the other 10,000 union workers, maybe not all of them, but the majority of them. The university will now have to go back to them and say, this is what we negotiated with the other workers, and so let's talk. And so those workers who are not here today that are represented by unions will also feel the impact of our solidarity. The solidarity that is expressed together when we have 20,000 workers is critical. And this is what I think we just want to mark. So on one level, it's critical because it's morally right to fight for the most vulnerable during a health crisis. That is the right thing to do, particularly for a public university and particularly for all of us as union members. An injury to one is an injury to all. But it's more than just morally correct. It's politically correct, right? Because when we fight together, when we build together, our power grows exponentially and we win. And that's what we showed through this process, but just the first taste of it. The university did not want to agree to many aspects of this MOA, but they had to because we forced them to. So moving forward from this MOA, we will continue to build together. And the day this MOA is ratified, I hope, we all hope, and it's ratified at different moments for the different unions. We, the 10,000 workers in this MOA and the other 10,000 union workers will come together to launch our collective contract campaign. And I'm going to argue, and I'll continue to argue, that we also need to build a Rutgers Workers Council for all the workers at this university. So we come together as 30,000 of us, the 10,000 that are non-union. We all need to build our voices together. And we need to do that with students as well. And in that fight, in the fight for the contract campaign, we will pick up the missing pieces. The grads that are facing invisible layoffs and haven't gotten extensions that we need to get extensions for, the laid off staff that Ryan mentioned in the comments that have been fired and have not been brought back yet, we must pick them up. That has got to be a focus for us. So we'll do that, we'll do it together. And we're the ones that are going to figure out the future of this university, not the bureaucrats on the other side. And I just need to say this for my members in case I don't have a moment to do it otherwise, for our members, Donna and Hassan, that right after this event, we will launch our vote and we'll send out an email explaining that. So I'm going to leave it there. I think we're going into Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Todd, for that powerful conclusion and for that reorientation towards the future. And thank you for everyone today who spoke and who shared and who kind of slogged through this cruel bargaining process. We're going to open up the floor for questions. I'm going to go ahead and take Danielle's question in the chat because I know she is not doing well and I'm going to ask it. So the question for the Q&A, also, I'm going to be gently telling you guys at like the 2-minute mark, if you're asking a question and you're rambling on, I'm going to gently coax you into wrapping up, very gently. So the question for the Q&A is, can you clarify where the funding for grad extensions are coming from? I think Todd can take this one.
Yes, so the money from the fund, I think this is an important point, just to be clear, particularly to the faculty here today. The money for the funding extensions is coming from either and both the Relief Act bill that was signed in December, and then also likely the American Recovery Act, which was signed, I don't know, what, a couple of weeks ago. It is not coming directly from the money from the work share program that's saved. So while faculty should recognize that we're in solidarity fully with grad workers, we should not think that there's a one-to-one correspondence between the money saved in the work share program and the grad extension program. That's just not how it's working. I think we want to make sure that's clarified.
Thank you, Todd. The floor is open, you guys. David Winters.
Hi, thanks so much. This was awesome. I've had a chance to work with most of the folks who have spoken today in one capacity or another, and you guys are the best. And thank you so much for all the work that you've done. And this is a really big moment. I wanted to make a quick comment about Todd talking about the workers' councils and the possibility that workers' councils, the possibility of workers' councils playing a leadership role at Rutgers and what that might look like. And I think this is key in our thinking for the next steps, like how not just to win at the bargaining table, but how to build our own power over the decisions that get made about strategy and budgets at Rutgers. And workers' councils, I think, are a wonderful place to build from. And the Holloway administration has given us a very interesting target in that they have attempted purposely, right, to centralize decision-making into a very small group. And so they've told us that the group that makes decisions is Holloway's Office of Strategy. So as we're building our power and trying to contest their power, we've already been given a very clear target where decisions are being made that we absolutely have to knock down the door of, so that we're also at that particular table where all of the decisions are being made, where all the strategy is being formed. So that's just it. My question comment is workers' councils. I'm so for it, and I hope we can target the real decision-making structures at Rutgers. I feel like that's the real win. And congratulations, everybody. Great work.
Ed, would you like to come on and ask your question?
Sure, thanks. Exactly following on this, and also to begin, I wasn't involved in any of this, but it is so inspiring, and I have been telling so many of my friends about it. And I've been at Rutgers for 33 years, and I have never been proud of being part of Rutgers before, because, you know, the RU screw is real, and it's, you know, institutional. Anyway, thank you all so much. But I wanted to pick up on Todd's sort of intimation about the attitude of the new administration in relationship to this question about decision making. And so I wanted to know what you thought Holloway's impact, you know, in the kind of change of the union, of the management's position from the earlier proposal to the most recent one, in any way reflected kind of Holloway's intervention. And basically my question is, are we optimistic?
I can start, and I'll invite others to jump in. Thank you for the question and for the comments, Ed. It's sincerely appreciated. I would say my position is cautiously optimistic, but cautiously optimistic, right? Jonathan Holloway, as the president of the university, has signaled that he wants to take a different direction. Somebody needs to be muted, and that's important. And we want to call him to that. The thing that makes me nervous is that most of the people that still run the critical departments of the university are the people that ran it under President Vajtay. And many of them come directly out of the Chris Christie regime. And we know how they feel about workers, and we know what their priorities are. So President Holloway has signaled that he wants to take a different direction, and we want to join him if he's willing to do that in working together and taking that direction. And this MOA is potentially a serious step forward. But I think we also have to recognize the forces within the administration that are still there and what their vision is. And Rutgers is run, it's a complicated place with a lot of complex decision-making processes and a lot of people fighting for a lot of turf inside the palace. So yeah, let's hope.
So just to kind of piggyback on what Todd was saying, I agree with the cautious optimism. Is he better than Vajtay? He seems that way so far. But we have, this was a pretty unique situation, to say the least, that there were other pressures at play. So there was also pressure from the state and from the governor's office that sort of, we feel, tipped the scale a little bit towards the end. But we also have people like Chancellor Strom. We also have people like the entire HR department, just about, that really are pretty significantly awful. And I think that getting through this and on the way out of this, that we should really start campaigns to really start focusing on those particular areas of rot and trying to create conditions that force them out.
I think, to the extent that President Holloway says that he wants to be different, I think we're going to have to continue to hold him accountable to that. We said this actually in relationship to a good president at another institution, that presidents come and go, but the people they have employed behind the scenes stick around and continue to uphold the same policies that we, don't agree with. So, he has influence over them, but he's at the same time said many times, I don't want to micromanage my leadership teams. So it's going to take people keeping his feet to the fire, I think, to make sure that this stuff goes the way we need it to.
Thanks so much, everyone. Tom, would you like to come on and ask your question?
Yeah, I have an aunt that works in dining services, and I also know some people in dining services who were laid off pretty uniformly at the beginning of the pandemic. And I know one individual had to take up a janitorial job in my building, and that's the only reason I found out about it, is because she was cleaning or helping out in my building where we were doing the COVID testing during the pandemic. And just that so many people are employed by the dining services, and sort of the room and board facilities, and how necessary it is to bring those people back online, especially for the upcoming fall semester, if we can reopen.
I'm sorry, Tom, I might have missed the question at the end. I'm so sorry. I know you have a mask on and you're in a public place, but could you maybe re-articulate it one more time? My apologies.
Yeah, just what are our plans going forward to making sure all the dining staff and the people that were laid off at the beginning of the pandemic are being rehired now that we're sort of establishing ourselves again?
Hi, Tom. Okay. Hi, Tom. My understanding is that since President Holloway has pledged that students will come back, and in our conversations with Tony Calcato and others, there's going to be an expectation that that when the students return, or before the students return, many of our dining workers will return in preparation, right? So with that said, I don't have a firm and definitive timeline. I have every expectation that our people will be returned in dining. I have pushed to ask for a more definitive timeline, but management has not shared their plans yet. But truly, what it comes down to is, as many others have said, Rutgers works because we work, right? So if there's an expectation that we're going to come as close to normal as possible, and make no mistake, the pandemic is not over, right? So I don't want to get into a position where I say that everybody's coming back, because we've also been advocating for telecommuting in a sustained and elongated manner, right? But I want our people to return to work. And for those who have to work in person, then that requires services that have shut down to be reopened. I look forward to that happening soon.
Part of what's going to change this conversation, I think, is if we all get our unions collectively organized, internally and together, in order to say that, to put up a credible threat against the university. If they say, we're going to lay off 900 dining workers, we say, no, you're not. You have 600 million unrestricted reserves in the bank, which they actually added to during the pandemic. That's not quite where we found ourselves at the beginning of the pandemic. And, obviously during a pandemic when everybody is struggling even more than usual, it's a hard time to try to build that sort of thing. But I think we're getting a breather now, and we're going to be owning a contract negotiations next year. And now's the time to start that fight, I think.
I just want to say one quick thing. I think I see Donna as well wants to speak. I just want to say, Tom, so there's a strategy that we can take on with URA and URA staff, and we'll work collectively for those are dining service, largely managers, right, Christine? There are the members that are largely in AFSCME, I think 888, who are the biggest layer of layoffs. They often come off their seasonal appointments. So they often come off employment sometime in June and come back in September every year, well before the pandemic. And they went off employment this year and didn't come back. And I mean, my sincere and deepest hope is that we pull AFSCME back into collaborating so that we can fight with them to do this, right? And to get those staff brought back, particularly probably for the fall of 2021. That's, I think, the goal, but also we have to be careful. It's not our members. So we have to work with Danny. Danny has to want to work with us. AFSCME 888 has to want to work with us to do that work. And so it's certainly a priority, but it's a priority that has to be dealt with delicately.
One quick thing. Sorry, you go ahead.
Go, Donna.
One quick thing I just wanted to say is that thank you for that question, as particularly because the laying off of dining hall workers is one of the biggest areas where we lost women of color workers at Rutgers. And so this is core to our intersectional vision. And I wanted to mention that another thing that the Coalition of Rutgers Unions has done, working as a unit with 20,000 workers, is that we were able to win the reinstatement of our funding in October of 2020, last fall. So I think that, the state has been good to us. And this also speaks to the previous question about our new president, Jonathan Holloway. Given that both the state of New Jersey has restored our funding and we're receiving money from the federal government, at the top of the list has to be this reinstatement of workers who have lost their jobs and their health insurance and tuition remissions during a pandemic.
Absolutely. So particularly for our dining hall supervisors and our chef managers and assorted other people that work in dining, they are dependent on, as everybody, dependent on their check, because none of us come to volunteer at this fabulous university, right? But they're dependent on their health benefits. And for many of them, they are dependent on tuition remission. And I can't emphasize that enough. Like in the group of close to 800 people, there were dozens of students that were harmed, right? Non-intentionally or perhaps intentionally by the university, right? But they had to either stop their education or their families had to take on additional debt in order to continue their education. And for my members particularly, many of them, are couples. We have multiple couples that work in dining services. So it wasn't just that one parent lost their job, both parents lost their job. And so they experienced true devastation simultaneously and didn't know where to turn. I have kept in touch with them. They have all survived. Some have been brought back. One half of the couple has been brought back in a management role. But moving forward, as the university returns to, again, a more normal operation, our members will be brought back in reverse seniority order as our contract requires, right? So this is where having a union contract and having strong protections for those who are laid off does matter. So I look forward to that, but they'll be held to pay if they try to bring back people out of order. Let's just say.
You know, and you speak so well on this, Christine. I know you've been at the epicenter of that whole battle. You know, I kind of said something about this in my beginning statement, that we need to create, hopefully this coalition work and this agreement has created some hope for the trade unions and for the people who make less salary than we do. I think that the ultimate goal of this coalition work should really be a shared sense of class solidarity. Because just to be transparent and honest, you know, throughout this work, you know, we've found some blind spots, and we've found some places where things were a bit tone deaf for those who don't, you know, who don't make as much money, people who are in different areas, people have different needs. And as a clinical social worker and as a community servant, more or less, I am exposed to poverty and loss and trauma every single day. I am inundated in it. And we really need to give people a place where they can be heard, where they can be, you know, I was arrested a couple of years ago with the Poor People's Campaign out in front of the State House in Trenton, proudly. And that whole campaign created a platform for people to come forward and speak. And when we were talking about the worker councils and things like that, absolutely yes. I will fight within this coalition to try and ensure that to happen. Because when we saw people have to kind of break off and go their own way, it was kind of heartbreaking to me, to be honest. And I think that we really do need to invest in bringing those people back, because they're just as important as the rest of us, that they're critical parts of our infrastructure here.
Thank you, Justin, for that insight. Thank you all for that insight. Lauren, would you like to come on and ask your question, please? Totally cool. Jesse, would you like to come on and ask your question? I see your message, Lauren. Let me. Totally fine. Give me a second. So I'm going to read Lauren's comment. I work for RBHS, where the agreement with English is my second language, you guys, Barnabas, was just signed. I'm being told Barnabas will not be doing staff assessments within the next year or so. To me, that sounds like layoffs that are on the way. Are we keeping an eye on this, as I'm not fully understanding this agreement and we have not been told much of anything?
So Isan, I'd like to jump in, but I know that Ryan and Justin and Dio do also. We are trying to watch what is in those agreements. We are trying to save your jobs. That's why you have a contract. We are trying to watch them. We have coalitions with the community and coalitions here at Rutgers, speaking to the President Holloway and Chancellor Strom just this last week about securing jobs and their relationship with University Hospital and our workers. So there's a lot we don't know, and I'm going to let others speak, but we are watching them and we are trying to ensure that we keep your jobs. And that's why we are working together.
Yeah, I can also say there are some things that they're not allowed to do. So one example is we have seen them doing things like sort of not refilling positions that are Rutgers positions that are in our union, and instead filling new positions on the Barnabas side. All sorts of similar tactics to that. And they're not allowed to do that. And unfortunately, to some extent, some of the remedies are like report them to the state, which, you know, we're talking a year plus to resolve. Ultimately, the best solution for any of these things is for members to get together and say, you're not going to do this, or something bad is going to happen. That's something that we're working on, but we're also, you know, in the meantime, going to file charges about things like that where appropriate. We don't always know everywhere where that's happening until people report it to us, you know, so we're aware of this happening at CINJ, you know, at our other employer, University Hospital, we're seeing some of this with University Physicians Associates. But if there is something that's happening in your area that does not seem right, and it looks like they're eroding union jobs and handing them over to another organization, or you're being placed in a weird situation where you're like reporting to a Barnabas supervisor or something like that, just reach out to a union rep or to one of us, and you know, the specifics we can deal with.
So I was in a leadership position during that whole time, and I was also the head of the COPE committee for a while, which is the Committee on Political Education, and I was pretty much in the middle of that when it was all going on, and there was a major transparency issue, and one of the key ways that we tried to move forward with that, which we're still doing, is a legislative approach to this. I don't want to give out too many secrets at this moment in time, but I can say that we have pressed charges in some instances. We pressed charges for double breasting, what Ryan was talking about, creating what would be bargaining unit positions under the private sector, not union aligned. And also, we've had these open public record requests. We've even discussed the idea of trying to call in Auditor General to look over all of the information and all of the finances. Because, you know, just to be honest about this, RWJ Barnabas is in the pocket of every single politician in this entire area. If you open up, you know, if you actually get the newspaper anymore and open up, you know, the Star Ledger, or you go on NJ.com, every other advertisement you see is actually for RWJ and Rutgers Health. They are literally bulldozing a school in New Brunswick for mostly, you know, children of undocumented immigrant parents, and throwing them into a warehouse to build a cancer center, a big monolith in the middle of the city. Now, nobody here is against cancer care. Nobody here is against health, right? I mean, it's what we fight for. It's what we do. Yet again, there's a lot of power and influence, and we have to literally fight on multiple fronts in order to try and head them, you know, to try and cut it off before it becomes something. And it's been exhausting, but we're going to do everything that we can to preserve the public elements of this institution. That's pretty much the main reason why I've stayed doing this for as long and have like lost my mind over the past couple of years fighting it. So yeah, we're going to do our best to be transparent with this stuff, but your concerns are our own.
I just want to jump in again, and I want to give Dio an opportunity. I see that in the chat, Jess is asked about APS and being bought out. So let me just say, a lot of when we had Robert Wood Johnson Medical, when we had Barnabas trying to take over parts of the medical school, but not the Newark part, just the New Brunswick part, it was pretty clear that they didn't want the mental health component because it wasn't the moneymaker that they wanted. So it's we don't know that there's going to be any type of buying out of certain areas, but we again are watching that, and we're trying to get access to the agreements that Rutgers has with these areas, and we're constantly challenging Chancellor Strom and asking him questions, and going to the Senate and going to President Holloway and pivoting to different ways that we can look to make sure that they know we are watching them. Theo, you have the most experience in this stuff.
Yeah, so with respect to Barnabas, it's something that we've been working on for a couple of years now, or a little over a couple of years that this affiliation has been in place. We knew it was going to be a problem when they first announced it, and it's been a very slow burn. I think the most acute effects have been in Robert Wood Johnson Medical School, where they have a practice agreement that they signed a few months ago. And a lot of the major management decisions are now being done by the Barnabas Health System. Yeah, so our RBHS unions are meeting, and we're going to have a concerted approach to dealing with this issue, because it's going to cost a lot of good union jobs. And to the extent that you're already feeling it, I mean, please not just, you know, ask a question here, but please send a like an email version of your question to your particular union, so that we can kind of keep track of what's going on, because you know, it's so broad that sometimes we don't know everything that's happening. So I'd like to sort of centralize some of the information. So if you can take a second just to send an email, and then this way we can, when next time the RBHS unions meet, we can have a better idea of with the latest stuff that's happening, because that's something that we're going to be escalating in the next, towards the end of the year. We really want to get something done on this because it's only going to get worse from here. And the agreement that they signed with Barnabas has all sorts of things in there where they feel like they can just suspend faculty, they can suspend faculty and staff and let Rutgers have to deal with it in some fashion, which I don't understand is how it's compatible with our collective bargaining agreements. But I don't want to spend all this time now going into those details. But it's a huge. You're just seeing the sort of tip of the iceberg of what's going to be going on with this, and it's going to be a huge issue for the RBHS unions in this coming negotiation.
So just one fast, we have just to reiterate what Kathleen was saying, we don't have any evidence that RWJ Barnabas is coming in to take over the acute psychiatric screening department. As you know, I work in UBHC. I'm on the second floor of the building right now. But I know where this is coming from because RWJ made a big injection of cash into the call center on Centennial in Piscataway. And you know how these corporate monsters get their hooks in with money, right? They dangle the carrot more or less. And our CEO to UBHC, Frank Anasi, is duly employed. So he's employed with RWJ Barnabas and he's employed with UBHC. And if you look at his track record, where he came from, Western Psychiatric Institute in Pittsburgh, there was a hell of a lot of union busting that went on there. And we believe that he was actually cherry picked for the sole purpose to come here and do what he did at Western Psych. So I just want to let you know, particularly when it comes to my mental health people, I will go to war with all of them. And I hope that you'll be by my side, and we will let you guys know whenever these threats come around, because you are our eyes and ears, and we need you guys to report to us and let us know what's happening, because without you, we don't really have any power.
Thanks so much, everyone. Guys, we still have a few more minutes. If there are any final questions or comments you'd like to share, now is the time. Stack is open. If not, I would like to use this time to ask any of our panelists to give any concluding statements or remarks or anything that they feel like they weren't able to share, please.
I guess I'll start. So there's just a couple of things. Rutgers policies are based on austerity and just flat out cruelty and greed. And you can only carry out these kinds of policies for so long until people start to become hardened or almost immune to it. And the way I see this whole coalition moving forward, and the way I see each of our locals moving forward, is by internally organizing, as Ryan said previously, getting ourselves to a place where we're actually strike ready. But secondly, combating Rutgers toe to toe with a shared sense of common humanity, with altruism, and a real sense of compassion, because love will endure. And we have to look out for each other, and we have to look at our common humanity and realize that, you know what, we're all in this fight together. That's all.
I just wanted to say that one of the things that I find so inspiring is the solidarity of how we've all come together, how it connects all the workers at Rutgers, but then in turn, how it connects us to the larger community of New Jersey. Speaking to that earlier question about University Hospital, this is the only public hospital in New Jersey, and it is so crucial. And for our coalition of Rutgers unions, there are two primary community struggles that we've been deeply invested in. One, Lincoln Annex, so the fight over the grade school that is being closed in order to open a cancer institute. And then two, University Hospital, which was severed from UNDMJ when the merger happened in 2012. So I guess I just want to conclude by saying, you know, the kind of solidarity and coalition work that you're seeing, it's important for us as workers at Rutgers, but it's also crucial in the ways that we really use our public university to serve people and to serve the communities of New Jersey.
Something I wanted to bring up, I thought of earlier. One of the things that we're working on, some of us in conjunction with the Public Higher Education Workers Network, which is operated out of Labor Notes, is a university debt reveal. And one of the things we've been talking about there is how university debt can actually have an impact on, basically all of the staff and students are paying a portion of debt service. And so one of the things they talked about there is that universities that have, quote, flexibility when dealing with their labor unions and staff have higher bond ratings. Rutgers has a AAA3 bond rating. And I think one of the reasons probably is this subject to language that just gave us all the shaft. And so I think that the coalition is going to be working on something for that. There's a debt reveal day that's happening on April 15th. And I'm not sure how this is going to play out in this coalition just yet, but it's part of, in addition to runaway higher leadership salaries, and the average leadership salary increase over the last few years has been like $12,000. I'm quite sure nobody on this call has gotten a raise that large in the entire time they've been working there. So these sorts of things, there are all these things that contribute to this austerity, and colleges are rewarded by these vulture capitalists for having worker hostile policies. And so I think that's, stay tuned for that. And I think Bryan probably wants to say something about that too.
No, I'm glad you did say that, Ron. I actually wanted to make another point, but just I'll remind everybody that the event that Ryan's talking about is on April 15th. And some of us in crew organizing are thinking about joining this national effort that's taking place at a number of other universities. And that's really just the point that I wanted to make, that this agreement was finalized in part with an eye toward the fact that there is a fight to come for many of these unions in the next year, and that fight is ongoing, right? And so that some of the things, for instance, that grads won in here are only acceptable, of course, to grads, with the idea that going forward there is still a fight to come, and that which will be joined. So I just wanted to put a word out to anybody who's interested in coalition unions to join the crew organizing effort. A number of unions are already represented, but we're always interested to have others represented, to think about our common interests and how to organize our coalition around those better than we're doing, as well as we can, I guess I should say. And so thanks again, everybody.
Go, Kathy, please.
Sorry, I wanted to jump in because I wanted to respond to two things that were in the chat. I saw someone said, somebody mentioned health benefits. That was me. You'll be hearing from us about health benefits and other options in the next few weeks. We are still working with Rutgers on that. I also saw in the chat someone asking, does the CHU Child Health Unit have to furlough? I would assume that you are HPAE, and the answer is no, but you should follow up offline because you are paid from a grant from the state of New Jersey. So I'll let HPAE follow up with you there. And then there was another comment about CINJ and working 2 and 3 jobs. And what I would say to you is, please don't assume that we know what's going on in your area. You're absolutely right that management talks to each other with Barnabas and on the Rutgers side, but please make sure that your union reps know what's going on. So if something is about to go down or something that we could perhaps stop, we get a heads up. And then I want to just end with, someone asked in the very beginning, are we hopeful? I am hopeful because what we just accomplished in getting this settlement together is tremendous solidarity, and it's a big step. It won't be easy moving forward. We're just about to offer you something in health benefits that we did together. It was a collaboration. And I guarantee bargaining the next contract will be harder than ever because they don't want us to continue to work together. But I am hopeful.
And just to answer the child health unit question really quickly, we've contacted management there and they will be exempting people from furloughs. So that will not affect your unit.
I just want to, sorry, Todd. No, go ahead,
please,
Todd.
Christine, go. I don't want to.
Okay, I just want to close with, look, we come to an historic agreement, and I just want to encourage everyone to vote to ratify, right? If you have received your link, please vote. If there's, vote to sustain this coalition and vote to emphasize how important this is to all of us, right? This is really a move in the right direction. And I look forward to working with all of you moving forward. Thank you. Go Todd.
Well, I wonder, Isan, do you want to say, so you want me to jump in? I want to make space for you too.
Todd, please go ahead.
Okay. I just want to echo, I mean, on a pragmatic level, first for Rutgers AAUP-AFT members, directly after this, you will get 2 emails, one from the union that says the vote is open, and one from the platform we're using that's called Election Runner, which will be your actual vote, which is a obviously private vote. So please look out for that. Voting will start for our union tonight and go through to Monday at 5 p.m. I think CWA is almost done with their vote, and URA starts tomorrow, and HPAE started yesterday. So I think that's where things stand. So please vote. And I just want to say really quickly, we do have something important and special here. There is a lot of work to be done, but we need to build off this. We need to vote for this tentative agreement, even though it leaves some of us behind, and we need to be clear about that, right? There are many people in Christine's unit that have not been hired back. There are grads who are facing invisible layoffs that must get extensions. There are people in Ryan and Justin's unit that haven't been hired back, right? I believe. So we have to pick up the pieces and keep fighting together. But what we have is something powerful. So vote yes for this. And then on the day this is ratified, we start preparing for our contract campaign. All of the contracts of the people on this call are up on June 30th of 2022. That's a scant 14 months from now. We have work to do to get ready to force this university to be the kind of university we demand and deserve.
And can I add one last thing before we close out? If you'd like to hear more about our coalition efforts, we've started a Freedom School, which is also a YouTube channel. And this event will be placed there. So if you want to share it with friends, family and comrades, please do. And feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see what we're up to next. I'm putting it in the chat right now.
We are exactly at 6:30. Thank you all so much for an incredible event. Thank you for sharing your insights, and thank you for the fight you fought over the last few months. And thank you for allowing me to moderate such an event. I am, as always, humbled and gratified to be among people like you. Thank you, everyone.